We were a metal band. We did this because we loved it.
There was that love of being able to coincide the genres and show that we can do a lot of cool things too alongside with what we have.
I really remember like fall of 81, I had started college at St. John's University. All I listened to at that point in time was Iron Maiden and Run DMC. I mean, it was equal. I both moved me the same way.
Rock, metal, punk, hip hop, there was, particularly in New York, there was a strata where there was a lot of commingling.
There was that word crossover.
There was a kind of outlaw camaraderie.
But what I started noticing, perhaps due to college radio, that more people started listening to different kinds of music. You started seeing Run DMC shirts around.
Growing up where I grew up, hip hop, well, I'm sure it was huge on the East Coast too, but it was becoming this thing that you had to listen to.
And I think that's to do with the changing of the times, young people not carrying this separations made by maybe what their parents, or this, these people live here and we live there, where another generation went like, no, man, we're just not gonna carry all that because it makes no sense, it's no fun, and at the end of the day, it's hateful.
1991, always on the run. 7 years ago, we wrote this one. Like 30 Cent Jr. before its time. 7 years later, and it's holding up fine. Stupid motherfuckers like the Slayer said this, but there was no bandwagon when we wrote this. Stretched our boundaries, we opened the door that no one attempted before. 5 nights is short. Who gives a shit? We do what we like, we don't care what we fit. All you do, Jack, what is it? You're getting mad. Get off my dick.
I started to notice maybe later in the 80s, earlier in the 90s, when you start seeing Public Enemy shirts at your shows and Public Enemy shirts at metal shows.
It wasn't until Bring the Noise came out with Public Enemy where I was like, hallelujah.
Can you go? Death row? What a brother, no. Once again, back is the incredible rhyme animal, the uncannibal D. Public Enemy #1. 5 said freeze. And I got young. Can I tell him never had a gun? But it's the wax that the Terminator X1.
I grew up listening to WABC. I grew up listening to, metal. That was just like, I went to a high school where, it was predominantly white in Long Island. I was bused from my black town to this school, and so we were exposed to everything that they were listening to, from the Zeppelins to the Bostons. And the Frampton was in my high school year, and Jackson Browne. So somewhere in the middle of that was the metal mix.
But we all came up in that New York zeitgeist, and that is a big deal.
The rock guys had the venues figured out, even on Long Island, but they were just live bands that was kicking ass, and we wanted to emulate that. We wanted to emulate it so much, we wanted the hip hop to follow the metal scene on Long Island, but in our own way. Because we felt that DJs and MCs should have logos too. Every time I would open up a Good Times or Island Ear, I would see this band and they would have a logo, whether you knew them or not. That's where the Public Enemy logo came from, which kind of turned Scott Ian on as being kind of, a legitimate, rap marketing, aspect.
Scott wore the Public Enemy shirt on stage a lot. If you notice in some of the old pictures.
We got signed to Def Jam, and our publicist, the Svengali, the main guru, Bill Adler, had all kinds of cutouts from the British papers, NME and Melody Maker, on his desk. And it happened to be, I looked at this picture where I saw this guy wearing a Public Enemy shirt playing in front of like 100,000 people.
I got an advanced copy of Yo Bum Rush the Show. Earlier, we had friends at Def Jam. They were just like, wait till you hear this next thing. This guy, Chuck D's, got the heaviest voice in rap music. He's the best rhymer ever. I was obsessed with it. Like, Public Enemy, for me, I was obsessed with it as much as I've ever been obsessed with any other band.
Oh yeah, I heard of Anthrax, of course. The scenes were all kind of interlocked with each other. So this was a guy who was from the area with a band from the area wearing a Public Enemy shirt. I was blown away. It was actually the inspiration for writing Bring the Noise.
Chuck put the line Anthrax is for Anthrax in the song.
Public Enemy song Bring the Noise is actually a song that was featured for the soundtrack Less Than Zero, which came out in November of 1987 when we submitted that song. And inside the third verse of the lyric is like the wax is for Anthrax, meaning that, hip hop and rap music and rock and thrash, we were all the same.
I couldn't believe Public Enemy just name checked us in their song, in a good way. Like we weren't getting called out for being assholes. We ended up meeting each other. We became friends because of our mutual friends at Def Jam.
What few baseball hats and few sports insignia teams were available, Scott wore those. He wore those teams like a hip hop dude,
Pretty sure the first time we met, Chuck came to see us at the Beacon Theater, I think in December of '87, when we were on that headline run where we had Exodus and Celtic Frost with us. I don't know if they came together, but Chuck and Vernon were definitely in the dressing room hanging out with us. And I'm pretty sure that's the first time we actually met. And we hit it off, right away. It was just like just lots of mutual love affair. It was great. We've been friends ever since.
He's one of the best, man. And it was so great meeting Chuck for the first time because he was just like, makes you feel like you've known him forever.
This is how great of a person Chuck D is. There's this award show in New York way back when. It was at the Beacon Theater in New York. So Public Enemy was there, and Anthrax. I think we were up for an award, or we were winning an award or something. So I had to go down to represent us because nobody else was in town. We get the award, all that stuff. I say goodbye, and Chuck and Ola. So I go down to the garage near the Beacon Theater. Go down, and my fucking car decides not to start. Right? It's stuck. It's dead. My fucking car is dead. It wouldn't go. So I'm embarrassed. I'm stuck. I'm frustrated. I want to get the fuck home. Right? Who do I see come up next to me? He goes, "Hey, what's up, Frank?" It's Chuck D. He goes, "What's wrong? You got problems?" I have the hood up and everything. I'm trying to see. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with the engine, right? So he goes, "All right, you know what? Leave this here. I'm driving you home." I said, "No, you're not driving me home. That's way out of your way." He goes, "I'm driving you home." And he says hello to my wife, and he says, "Come on, let's go." Brings me in this car, dude. He drives me all the way home. That's completely out of his way. Drives me to the front door of my house and gets me home safely. And that's what kind of great person Chuck D is. And I'll never forget that. Aside from being one of the best voices and obvious rappers in the world and icons, but the other side is he's just a great person.
It was totally Charlie and Scott's idea on Bring the Noise. I had already said, "Hey, you guys want to cover it?" Because they asked, can I cover it with them? And they were pretty much like, look, we want to try to make a version here. And I was like, well, Bring the Noise already was a hit in our field. And I totally didn't get that they wanted to flip it and make it go totally metal.
Scott was very, very vocal about doing Bring the Noise.
I thought it was a great idea because they're a heavy band. Charlie thought it was a great idea too. He's a fan.
He wanted the guitars to do some of what the horns were doing. For me, I just wanted to beef it up with like fast kick and just beef the song up.
Metal, rock and rap colliding together. The fact that the Bomb Squad, when they did Nation of Millions, they sampled Slayer. You know what I'm saying? For She Watched Channel Zero.
I mean, you don't need me, And they say, "Yes, we do need you, Chuck. Where are you?"
Chuck's tone is so heavy. It's like Black Sabbath tuning down. That's how Chuck D's voice is.
But they took the music and built around the vocal, which was unprecedented. I wish I could lay claim to making that happen, but it was totally Scotty and Charlie making me fit. And before we even toured, we appeared on the stage at the Garden.
That was the night that we decided we were going to have Chuck and Flav. We asked those guys if they wanted to come down, and then also asked them if they would want to do Bring the Noise as an encore with us. And they said, yeah, of course. And so we just figured, man, what a night, to premiere this. And as great as our show was, hitting that stage and feeling the love from the audience that night as the New York band, playing the Garden, and on a night where every band had a great show, when Chuck and Flav came out and we kicked in to Bring the Noise, and it was like someone just like a lightning bolt, like Zeus threw a lightning bolt down through the ceiling of the Garden and hit, like literally zapped everyone, because the energy, all like even as high as it was, it literally blew the roof off when those guys came on stage. Not that we ever had a doubt that that song was going to be something, but we just performed it in front of like 16,000 hardcore metal fans, and they lost their shit.
That quickly opened up the floodgates for so many things to follow, including the Judgment Night soundtrack.
You got to think about these guys too. They broke the barrier doing all that stuff. And that was a New York thing too. I mean, they were very into the Beastie Boys, Run DMC, and once they got into that side of things and the Public Enemy, Bring the Noise, it was like, they really broke barriers with that, man. And I feel that they should have gotten a bit more credit on it, you know what I mean? Because they just changed the whole game.
I'm not sure that's worth credit at all.
Kerry King, I love, but sometimes he's such a grouch. Like, the thing is, does he not remember he played on a fucking Beastie Boys record? Like, take a little credit too, dude. Like, you soloed on 2 songs that made me a hip-hop head forever.
That's fair. It's still a little too much hip-hop for me, but, I'm more of a purist, and I'm not picking on them or picking on anybody that hip-hop's their music. I can relate that to when we finally did a song with Ice-T. And I turned down that soundtrack for the longest time, dude. I'd say, I don't want to do it. And then one day, my manager said, and he knew he had me, he said, what about Ice-T? And I went, that's not the stupidest thing I heard come out of your mouth. And I said, Ice-T's a metalhead, and we can pull this off, and it'll be unique, and it'll be awesome. And it was.
For me, the Judgment Night soundtrack is the ultimate compilation of when metal meets hip-hop. But if it wasn't for Bring the Noise being so accepted,
I was open to it. When they did that, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever heard, because I was already into the Beastie Boys, and I was into Run DMC, and I was into Public Enemy. And
I feel to this day they don't get the respect or appreciation for being that band that had the nerve to do that, to cross metal and hip hop. People flash on Aerosmith.
Yes, there was Run DMC and Aerosmith. Yes, we cannot forget that one. But that was kind of just cute, but it didn't really do much.
And the difference is that here you had a rock band covering a rap record, where Run DMC the year before was a rap band covering a rock song.
And they were anti-racist. Like, the fact that they did that, and then the fact that they did songs like Schism, and then they touched on it in other songs, where as I was becoming more socially aware and more, politically aware and growing up, they were there too.
I think a lot of people forget, or they forget to name check certain things that happened.
So that's where Anthrax made the history. It's like, go figure. Like, how dare y'all? Like, what the hell? You guys are covering a rap song and taking it into the stratosphere.
And before you know it, it became another thing, and then it became a tour.
We had a day off, and Chuck flew in to do it, and we were on the bus and talking. And
we were talking like, well, why don't we do what Run DMC didn't do, since, we were shooting a video, saying, well, let's tour.
That tour was pre-Lollapalooza.
We did Lollapalooza before Lollapalooza. That truly is an alternative bill. We wanted to put together an eclectic show. That was obviously, it's what we were going for.
It became this amazing tour that, in my eyes, it raised it again another level of how different Anthrax is, because we can't just be confined.
The opening band was this rap group called Young Black Teenagers, and then Primus, and then PE, and then us. We were big Primus fans, and just felt, wow, man, what a perfect band to put on, because they don't sound anything like us. They don't sound anything like PE. They don't sound anything like anybody except for Primus, and Primus was great. They crushed every night. Huge Primus sucks chants, just like you would expect them to have at their shows. We just really wanted to put on a show that no one had ever seen before.
That was one of my favorite tours of all time, touring with those guys. I loved it. I watched every night because it was just that special.
I always watched their sound checks, Public Enemy, and the stage moves they did. They had these great stage moves they did, and I always wanted to learn them, so I would learn them during the sound check. And I love that we did that, and people were worried about that tour and how it would be. Oh my God, is going to be a race thing going on there? Of course not. Fans understood what it was and how great it was, and they all came out, and it was great.
It's not what maybe we had expected or had thought would happen, like where, oh, well, it's us and Public Enemy, so it's going to be 50% white kids, 50% black kids. So we looked at it as, man, what a great thing if we could get like a generation of black kids, start listening to metal. We play the first show and it's like a 98% white audience. It was like that the first couple of gigs, and I said to Chuck, I said, would you have expected more black people to come to these shows? He said, oh, no, Scotty. He said, if we're out on a rap tour, yeah, then we have our black audience. But if we're out on a rock tour, we have a bigger white audience. Millions of white kids that got into rap music in the 80s. So when P was on, from the stage to halfway back was their people, and from halfway back to the back of the room, whatever it is, was our people. And then when PE would be done, you could literally watch the two crowds like switching places. But I will say this, people didn't leave. We didn't lose the audience, which to me was really great. People were really coming out to see something different and to experience something different.
And when we toured together, Public Enemy learned how to turn it up 2 notches, because our notches were heavy in the rap world. We had to really kind of turn it up 2 notches to keep up, not only with metal, but thrash metal, speed metal, and Anthrax.
It was great. I love when Chuck says Anthrax, Public Enemy, it was shrapnel. I love when he says that, because it's like, it's exactly what it is,
Those shows were packed from 20 minutes after doors until the last. Flav would get up on Charlie's drum kit at the end of the night. We'd Bring the Noise would be done, and
you couldn't stop Flavor from playing drums. Yo, check this out! And he was good. He played some fun stuff.
He would be up there rocking the beat for 15 minutes. Like the house lights are on, and he's just up there banging away. It was, again, what a run, man.
Every show was amazing on that tour. I love the backstage stuff we had. We had some of the most fun times on that tour. Flavor was in our dressing room just about every night playing Charlie's drum set he had back there. He was just jamming. It was fun as hell, man.
God, so much happened after that, and it was crazy. A lot of bands got careers too. We never intended to take it any further, but if we felt that if we couldn't top it, then we were not going to touch it.
It was great. Obviously at that point in time, I thought there was a vibe going on too. I mean, I hate to say it, but at that point I knew something was up. The band was acting a little weird towards me. So I think they were up to something. So I had mixed emotions, but the most of it, 90% of it, or say 85% of it, was awesome. Nothing else but fun there. I'm so happy that I got to do it. I think it was awesome.